Let's learn how to do the whip stitch. For this sample, you will need the label I provided you in class. Please at least write your name. You can fill in anything else that you want as you see fit. I had a little fun with writing and things on my label. You need one of your pattern pieces. You only need one piece with the seam allowance included, a single threaded needle, and some straight pins. The way I want you to place this label is I want you to put the top edge of your label against your stitch line so that it's nice and lined up somewhere around the middle of your sample piece. Then you need to pin it in place. You can pin it a couple of different ways. You could go this way, you could go this way. You want at least one pin on each side. Actually, I'm gonna go this way. And we're gonna go all the way through both layers, keeping an eye on this top edge, making sure it stays lined up with the stitch line, because wherever we pin it, this is where it's gonna live. So if it's crooked when you pin it, you're not gonna be able to straighten it out while you're sewing. I already have my needle prepped with a single thread, and I'm gonna start my stitching from underneath the pocket, the label right here. So I'm gonna go through the label first and pull through. So now we're gonna do the scoop method, and we're just gonna go all the way around. And I'm not going to speed up this process so you can see how long it actually takes me to completely sew around all four sides of this label. So starting at the corner, I'm gonna scoop in to this fabric, the sample fabric, right next to the label, and scoop back out into the side where the label is. If we flip this over, you can see that's my needle right there. We're going all the way through. And I'm gonna pull my needle through, just like that. And I'm gonna take another stitch in and back out. Now, there are lots of different ways you can make your whip stitches nice and neat and pretty, but honestly, a whip stitch is designed for me in costuming. I believe that a whip stitch is meant predominantly to get something on quickly. You just whip it on there. So you can take your time and make it all nice and neat and pretty if you'd like, but honestly, for my costume shop, if I'm asking you to whip stitch something, I just need it on, and most of the time we're using a whip stitch for a label. So as you whip, you do want to be careful when you're doing a label, especially if you're doing it on a garment where your stitches are going to be seen from the right side. You do want to make these stitches smaller from the right side, and there are ways to do that, and I'll show you along the next row. But for the purposes of this assignment, I don't really mind how big these stitches are. So just keep an eye out for that. We don't want them huge on this would be considered the right side of the fabric of a garment. So as you sew, you can also rotate the fabric around. So I'm gonna try and make my stitch on the right side a little less large. So the way I do that is I'm gonna go down and then immediately come right back up so that I'm taking a tinier stitch here. So, boop. And sometimes that may mean you have to come closer to the edge of the label. Do another one. Try and keep it nice and small. Just like that. And see, now those stitches are a bit smaller. But for the purpose of this assignment, it really doesn't matter. The goal is that you get a label on securely. And as I'm sewing, I am actually letting go with the 3 fingers that are holding the eye of the needle. I'm loosening those up so that this tail can shorten so I don't end up with a double thread in any of my stitches. So keep an eye on your stitches. Make sure you don't get a weird double thread because you haven't let your tail get shorter with your sewing. See, like right there. Now that's technically a double stitch. So I'm gonna just pull the eye of my needle till that comes out. Get to the corner, I'm gonna turn it, keep going. If you notice, one thing I'm doing is I'm making sure I don't go under my thread like this. I'm always going on top of it because I don't want to accidentally catch the thread below. To do so can actually generate a different stitch called a blanket stitch, which we are not doing in this class. Okay, so I've got 3 sides sewn on, so I feel really comfortable to just remove these pins entirely, and now they're out of my way to go down this last row. Okay, so I am back where I began. So let's see what this looks like. So this is what it looks like from this side. This is what it looks like from what would be the right side of the fabric or the outside of the garment. Now I'm ready to tie my knot. So in my how to tie a knot video, I discussed and demonstrated 2 different styles of knots. This particular example, I would end up, well, let me show you what I would do. So I would actually more likely choose the knot that I would just do like this, where it sits on top of the fabric, because for a label, for a garment for theater, I know this label's not gonna stay. I'm gonna take this label off sometime. So I would more likely choose the knot that does not require me to make the knot through the fabric. But if that is the knot that works better for you, what I would recommend is make sure that your thread is coming out of the label side and not the fabric side. And then just catch the label for that knot so that you're not catching your sample. And when this label would be inevitably taken out on a garment, you don't have to worry about trying to clip or get rid of the threads that is the knot tied around the fabric. So I am just catching the fabric of the label to do this knot. So that little tiny stitch, go until I have a small loop, pull it through, I do that twice, and then I just take 1 stitch straight through. Clip your threads, just like that, and you have completed a whip stitch to put on a label, which is the #1 reason that we use the whip stitch in the Miami University Costume Shop.